Good day, I'm Elisha Lane Altea C. Ramos, and for today's video, I'm going to show you what I've learned about fractions and decimals. First, let's talk about fraction. But what is a fraction? Fraction is from a Latin word factus, which means broken. Fraction is a part of a whole. It contains numerator, denominator, and a fraction bar. There are also two types of fractions. There are similar fractions and dissimilar fractions. Similar fractions have the same denominators, while dissimilar fractions have different denominators. Example, 1/3 and 2/3. This fractions is an example of a similar fraction. Now for the similar fractions. 9/10 and 3/4 is an example of the similar fractions. We also have proper fractions, improper fractions, and mixed fractions. Proper fractions. Numerator is lower than denominator. Improper fractions. Denominator is lower than numerator. Mixed fractions. A fraction with whole number. 1/3 is an example of proper fraction. 3/2 is an example of improper fraction. And 5 and 7/12 is an example of mixed fraction. Now we know about fractions, we need to know how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide fractions. If adding or subtracting similar fractions, just copy the denominator, then add or subtract the numerator, and simplify it if possible. Now for adding or subtracting the similar fractions. If we are adding or subtracting the similar fractions, just change the denominator into a similar fraction by using the LCD or least common denominator method, and follow the steps for adding or subtracting similar fractions and simplify it if possible. Now for multiplying similar and dissimilar fractions, we just need to multiply the numerator and the another numerator and the denominator and the other denominator. In division, we need to know the divisor because we have to reciprocal it. And when we are done, we will also need to change the operation to multiplication, and we will just follow how to multiply fractions. Now you know all about fractions, let's move on to decimals. But before that, what is the meaning of a decimal number? A decimal number is a number whose whole number part and the fractional part is separated by a decimal point. Decimal contains a whole number, fractional part, and a decimal point. In decimal, we're not gonna read this as 2.03, but we're gonna read this as 2 and 3/100ths. Now we know about decimals, we need to know how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide decimals. In adding or subtracting decimals, first we need to line up the decimal points vertically and put zeros if needed. Add or subtract the numbers. Place the decimal point in the sum or difference so that it lines up vertically with the numbers being added or subtracted. When multiplying decimals, you don't have to align the decimal point. Then, you just multiply all the numbers there. When you get the product, you will count the decimal places and move the decimal point to the left. In dividing decimals, move the decimal point of the divisor to the right until the divisor will be a whole number. Move the decimal point of the dividend to the right by the same number of places that the decimal point of the divisor moves. Place a zero if the decimal point have moved to a decimal place without a digit. Divide the dividend by the divisor with the decimal point in a new position. Now I've already shared to you what I've learned about fractions and decimals. Now, I'm going to share you what I've learned on how to convert a fraction to a decimal. The easiest way to convert a fraction to a decimal is to divide the numerator, or the top of the fraction, by the denominator, or the bottom of the fraction. The resulting answer will be the value of the fraction expressed as a decimal number. We have two types of answer when we convert fraction to decimal. It is terminating decimal and non-terminating decimal. Terminating decimals is an answer that ends, while non-terminating decimals is the one who doesn't end or endlessly. Non-terminating decimals, if your answer is just the same or it just repeats, just put a vinculum at the top of a fractional part that always repeats. Example, if your answer is 0 and 333 and so on and so forth, just do this. Just put the repeating number of the fractional part and put the vinculum on its top. And that's the thing I've learned about fractions and decimals.